In the heart of Newbridge, a busy city known for its never-ending traffic and towering skyscrapers, there lived a mechanic named Alex. He wasn't someone you'd notice in a crowd, just an ordinary guy with a passion for fixing things. But if you asked anyone at Speedy Auto Repair, they'd tell you that Alex was far from ordinary when it came to his work. His hands were like magic wands, bringing broken-down cars back to life with ease. People trusted him because he didn't just fix vehicles, he solved problems. Alex's day usually started early and ended late. The garage was always buzzing with customers dropping off their cars, complaining about strange noises or mysterious breakdowns. Most days Alex enjoyed the chaos, it kept him sharp. But some evenings, after hours of bending over engines and dealing with frustrated drivers, all he wanted was to lock up and go home. That's exactly how this particular evening began. It had been one of those long, exhausting days. Rain poured down outside, turning the streets into rivers of shimmering reflections under dim streetlights. Alex wiped his greasy hands on a rag and glanced at the clock hanging on the wall. It was almost closing time, and he couldn't wait to get out of his oil-stained coveralls. Just as he was about to flip the open sign to closed, a loud screech pierced through the rain-soaked silence. An ambulance skidded into the parking lot, tires splashing water everywhere. Its flashing lights painted the wet asphalt in alternating shades of red and blue. Alex froze for a moment, watching as two paramedics jumped out, their faces tense with urgency. One of them rushed toward him, while the other stayed near the vehicle, pulling open the back doors to reveal a stretcher carrying a patient hooked up to machines. "We need help," the paramedic shouted over the sound of the storm. "The engine, it's failing. We're trying to get to the hospital, but we can't." "Make it unless you fix this." Alex blinked, momentarily stunned. This wasn't something he encountered every day. Sure, people often brought their cars to him in desperate situations, but an ambulance, with a sick person inside? His mind raced. What if he couldn't fix it? What if he made things worse? But then he looked past the paramedic and saw the figure lying motionless on the Stretner. Tubes snaked around the patient's body, connecting them to monitors that beeped faintly despite the chaos. Whoever it was, they clearly needed immediate medical attention, and fast. There was no room for hesitation here. Without saying a word, Alex grabbed his toolbox and sprinted toward the ambulance. The rain soaked him instantly, plastering his hair to his forehead and soaking through his clothes. He slid under the hood, ignoring the cold droplets trickling down his neck. His fingers moved instinctively, searching for clues. He tapped valves, checked wires, and listened closely to the sputtering engine. It didn't take long for him to diagnose the problem: a faulty fuel pump. Now came the tricky part. Fixing a fuel pump wasn't rocket science, but doing it quickly, especially without the right equipment on hand, was another story altogether. Alex rummaged through the spare parts scattered around the garage, muttering to himself as he searched for something that could work. Finally, he found a compatible piece, a small victory in itself. As he worked, the paramedics hovered nearby, exchanging worried glances. They didn't know much about mechanics, but they understood enough to realize how dire the situation was. Every second counted, and the pressure weighed heavily on everyone present. Still, Alex remained focused. His world narrowed down to the task at hand: getting that ambulance back on the road. 20 minutes later, the engine roared back to life. Alex stepped back, breathing hard, as the paramedics cheered. They thanked him profusely, shaking his hand before jumping back into the ambulance. Within seconds, the vehicle sped off, disappearing into the rainy night. Exhausted but relieved, Alex trudged back inside the garage to clean up. He didn't think twice about what he'd done. It was just another job, albeit an unusual one. Little did he know, the person lying unconscious in that ambulance was none other than Richard Langley, the billionaire CEO of a massive tech company. And little did Alex know, this act of kindness would soon turn his life upside down. For now, though, Alex simply dried off, locked up the garage, and headed home, unaware of the storm brewing not outside, but within the walls of Speedy Auto Repair. The ambulance sped away into the rainy night, its red and blue lights fading into the distance. Inside, the paramedics worked tirelessly to stabilize the patient hooked up to machines that beeped with urgency. The man lying on the stretcher was Richard Langley, a name that carried immense weight in the business world. As the CEO of one of the largest tech companies globally, Richard was known for his sharp mind, relentless ambition, and billions in net worth. But at that moment, none of that mattered. He was just another human being fighting for his life. Back at the garage, Alex had no idea who the patient was or what kind of influence he held. All he knew was that he'd done his job, fixed an engine, so someone could get the help they desperately needed. Satisfied with his work but soaked to the bone, Alex cleaned up his tools, locked the garage, and drove home. The rain continued to pour as he sat in his small apartment, sipping a cup of tea and replaying the evening in his head. He felt good about helping the ambulance crew, even if it meant staying late. It wasn't every day you got to play a part in saving someone's life. The next morning, however, things took an unexpected turn. When Alex arrived at the garage, the atmosphere was tense. Mr. Thompson, the owner of Speedy Auto Repair, called him into the office. His face was stern, his arms crossed over his chest. Alex walked in, confused. What could this be about? Had something gone wrong with the ambulance? Was there a complaint? Do you know why I'm calling you in here? Mr. Thompson asked, his voice tight with frustration. Alex shook his head. No, sir. Did something happen? Mr. Thompson leaned forward, his eyes narrowing. You abandoned your post last night. Left the garage without permission to fix an ambulance. That's not part of your job description. Alex blinked, taken aback. But it was an emergency. They were taking a patient to the hospital and the ambulance broke down right outside our door. I couldn't just stand there and do nothing. That's exactly what you should have done, Mr. Thompson snapped. We have rules for a reason, Alex. You can't go around making decisions like that. What if more customers showed up while you were busy playing hero? What if we lost business because of your actions? Alex opened his mouth to argue, then closed it again. He wanted to explain how critical the situation had been, how lives depended on getting that ambulance moving. But he could see from the look on Mr. Thompson's face that nothing he said would change the man's mind. Rules were rules, and in Mr. Thompson's world, breaking them, even for a good cause, was unacceptable. I'm sorry, Alex said quietly. I thought I was doing the right thing. Well, thinking isn't enough, Mr. Thompson replied coldly. You're fired, effective immediately. The words hit Alex like a punch to the gut. Fired? For helping someone in need? It didn't make sense. He stared at Mr. Thompson, hoping this was some kind of cruel joke. But the expression on the man's face told him otherwise. This was real. As Alex packed up his belongings, his co-workers gathered around, whispering among themselves. Some looked sympathetic, others avoided meeting his gaze altogether. A few patted him on the back and muttered words of encouragement, but most kept their distance. Word traveled fast in a place like Speedy Auto Repair, and by lunchtime, everyone knew what had happened. News of Alex's firing spread beyond the garage, too. Customers who came in for repairs heard snippets of the story and shared it with friends and family. Some praised Alex for stepping up during a crisis, while others criticized him for going against company policy. Social media lit up with debates about whether Alex had done the right thing or if he deserved to lose his job. The incident became a hot topic of conversation across Newbridge. Meanwhile, Richard Langley was slowly recovering in the hospital. Doctors had managed to stabilize him after the ambulance delivered him just in time. Once he regained consciousness, he learned about the mechanic who had saved his life by fixing the ambulance. Intrigued, Richard asked his assistant to find out more about the man. Who was he? Where did he work? Why had he risked his job to help strangers? When Richard discovered that Alex had been fired for his actions, he was furious. How could someone be punished for showing such bravery and compassion? Determined to set things right, Richard instructed his team to track down Alex and learn everything they could about the situation. He also reached out to Speedy Auto Repair directly, demanding answers from Mr. Thompson. At first, Mr. Thompson tried to defend his decision. It's not personal, he told Richard's assistant over the phone. "We have policies in place to ensure smooth operations. If every employee started making exceptions, chaos would ensue." But Richard wasn't satisfied with excuses. He arranged a meeting with Mr. Thompson, determined to confront him face to face. When they finally met, Richard didn't mince words. "Your mechanic saved my life," he said bluntly. "And instead of thanking him, you fired him. Do you realize how ridiculous that sounds?" Mr. Thompson shifted uncomfortably in his seat. "I understand your perspective, Mr. Langley, but running a business requires discipline. We can't afford to let employees act impulsively." Richard leaned forward, his tone firm. "Discipline is important, yes, but so is humanity. Your mechanic showed incredible courage and selflessness last night. Instead of punishing him, you should be celebrating him." Despite Richard's arguments, Mr. Thompson refused to budge. He insisted that reinstating Alex would send the wrong message to other employees. To Richard, it was clear that the man cared more about protecting his precious rules than recognizing genuine acts of kindness. Frustrated but undeterred, Richard decided to take matters into his own hands. He couldn't force Mr. Thompson to rehire Alex, but he could offer the mechanic a lifeline. Using his vast network, Richard tracked down Alex and invited him to meet at a cafe downtown. At first, Alex was hesitant. He had no idea who Richard was or why a billionaire would want to talk to him, but curiosity got the better of him, and he agreed to go. When Alex arrived at the cafe, he found Richard waiting for him, dressed casually in jeans and a sweater. For a moment, Alex didn't recognize him. Only when Richard introduced himself did the pieces fall into place. Alex's jaw dropped as realization dawned. "Wait, you're the guy from the ambulance?" Richard nodded with a smile. "That's right, thanks to you I'm still here today." Alex stammered, unsure of what to say. I didn't know it was you. I didn't think twice about fixing the ambulance. Anyone would have done the same." "Not everyone," Richard replied. "Most people would have followed the rules even if it meant letting someone die. You didn't, and that says a lot about your character." They talked for hours, sharing stories and discussing the events that led to Alex's firing. By the end of the conversation, Richard extended an offer Alex couldn't refuse: a job at his company's state-of-the-art automotive division. It was a chance to start fresh, to rebuild his career with the support of someone who truly valued his skills and principles. For Alex, it felt like a miracle. Just days ago, he thought his life was falling apart. Now, he had hope again, and a powerful ally who believed in him. Little did he know, this was only the beginning of an extraordinary journey. Alex walked out of the cafe that day with a mix of emotions swirling inside him: shock, gratitude, disbelief. He had gone in thinking he'd just be meeting a stranger who wanted to thank him for fixing an ambulance. Instead, he left with a job offer from one of the most powerful men in the world. It felt surreal, like something out of a movie. But as Alex sat in his car afterward, staring at the dashboard, reality began to sink in. Richard Langley wasn't just offering him a position, he was giving him a lifeline. After being fired from Speedy Auto Repair, Alex had struggled to find work. Word about his dismissal spread quickly around town, and while some people admired his bravery, others saw him as unreliable, a rule breaker. Garage owners hesitated to hire him, worried they might face similar disciplinary issues. Bills were piling up, and Alex's confidence was at an all-time low. The thought of starting over seemed impossible until Richard stepped in. But accepting the offer wasn't easy for Alex. He wrestled with doubts. Was it wise to trust someone he barely knew? Could he really fit into a high-profile company run by a billionaire? What if he failed again? These questions haunted him as he drove home. Still, deep down, he knew this was an opportunity he couldn't pass up. For once, life was handing him a second chance, and not just any chance, but one backed by resources and support he could never have dreamed of. Meanwhile, Richard wasted no time putting his plan into motion. He didn't just want to give Alex a job. He wanted to make sure everyone understood the importance of what Alex had done. Using his influence, Richard launched a campaign to highlight Alex's story. He posted videos online, shared articles, and even appeared on news channels to talk about the mechanic who risked everything to save a life. In one interview, Richard said, "This man didn't think twice before stepping up during a crisis. He fixed an ambulance knowing full well it might cost him his job. And yet, when he did the right thing, he was punished for it. That's not how we should treat heroes." The response was overwhelming. People across the country rallied behind Alex, praising his courage and criticizing Speedy Auto Repair for their decision. Social media exploded with hashtags like "Stand with Alex" and "Do the right thing." Supporters flooded the garage's phone lines and social media pages with complaints, accusing them of valuing profits over humanity. Some even organized protests outside the shop, holding signs that read, "Compassion over rules and hire Alex back." For Mr. Thompson, the backlash was unbearable. Customers canceled appointments, vendors pulled contracts, and employees quit in solidarity with Alex. Local authorities began investigating allegations of unfair labor practices, further damaging the garage's reputation. Overnight, Speedy Auto Repair went from being a trusted local business to a symbol of corporate greed and inflexibility. Mr. Thompson tried to defend himself, issuing statements and appearing on TV to explain his side. But no matter how hard he argued, public opinion remained firmly against him. As the drama unfolded, Alex found himself caught in the middle of it all. Reporters camped outside his apartment, hoping to get an exclusive interview. Friends and acquaintances reached out, congratulating him or asking for advice on standing up for what's right. Strangers sent messages of encouragement, sharing their own stories of times they'd been punished for doing good deeds. At first, Alex felt overwhelmed by the attention. He wasn't used to being in the spotlight, and the constant scrutiny made him uneasy. But as days passed, he started to see the bigger picture. His story wasn't just about him anymore. It had become a rallying cry for people everywhere who believed in kindness, integrity, and the power of doing the right thing. Seeing how many lives his actions had touched gave Alex a renewed sense of purpose. He realized that his choice to fix the ambulance hadn't just saved one person's life. It had sparked a movement. While Alex adjusted to his newfound fame, Richard kept his promise. He introduced Alex to the team at his automotive division, ensuring he felt welcomed and supported. The facility was unlike anything Alex had ever seen: state-of-the-art equipment, cutting-edge technology, and a staff of highly skilled engineers and mechanics. At first, Alex worried he wouldn't measure up. Compared to these experts, he felt like a small fish in a big pond. But Richard reassured him, saying, "You don't need fancy degrees or certifications to prove your worth. What you've got is something far more valuable: heart and skill." Under Richard's guidance, Alex flourished. His natural talent for problem-solving earned him respect among his colleagues, and his humility won him friends. Slowly but surely, he began to feel like he belonged. More importantly, he started to believe in himself again. The weight of failure lifted, replaced by a growing sense of pride and accomplishment. Back at Speedy Auto Repair, things continued to spiral out of control. Business plummeted as boycotts and lawsuits piled up. Employees who stayed loyal to Mr. Thompson grew resentful, feeling abandoned by their boss's refusal to adapt. Even longtime customers turned their backs, choosing to take their vehicles elsewhere. Eventually, the financial strain became too much to bear. One morning, a sign appeared on the garage doors: "Permanently closed." For Mr. Thompson, it was a bitter pill to swallow. He had always prided himself on running a tight ship, sticking to the rules no matter what. Now those same rules had destroyed everything he had built. As he packed up his office for the last time, he couldn't help but wonder if things would have turned out differently had he chosen compassion over discipline. As for Alex, he moved forward with hope and determination. Every day brought new challenges and opportunities, but he faced them head-on, knowing he had the support of people who believed in him. His story served as a reminder that sometimes the hardest choices lead to the greatest rewards. And though he never sought fame or fortune, Alex became a symbol of resilience, a testament to the idea that doing the right thing, even when it's difficult, can change not only your life but the lives of countless others. Little did he know, this was just the beginning of a journey that would inspire millions and leave a lasting impact on the world. Life has a funny way of teaching lessons, and for Alex those lessons came fast and hard. The whirlwind of events that followed his decision to fix the ambulance had transformed him from an ordinary mechanic into a symbol of courage and integrity. But as much as he appreciated the support pouring in from all corners of the country, Alex knew this newfound attention wasn't what truly mattered. What mattered was how he chose to move forward, and whether he could use his experience to make a difference. At Richard's company, Alex settled into his new role with a mix of excitement and nervousness. It wasn't easy stepping into such a high-profile environment after years of working at a small-town garage. The facilities were impressive: gleaming tools, advanced diagnostic machines, and workshops designed to handle everything from luxury sports cars to experimental prototypes. At first, Alex felt out of place among the highly trained engineers and tech experts who seemed to speak a language he barely understood. But Richard made sure Alex never doubted his value. "You're not here because you can recite technical manuals," Richard told him one afternoon while touring the facility together. "You're here because you've got something most people lack: common sense, grit, and a heart bigger than this building. Trust me, we need more people like you." Those words stuck with Alex. They reminded him why he loved being a mechanic in the first place. Not for the fancy titles or cutting-edge gadgets, but for the satisfaction of solving problems and helping people. With time, Alex began to find his rhythm. He started suggesting practical improvements to processes that others hadn't considered, drawing on his years of hands-on experience. His ideas weren't always polished, but they worked, earning him respect from colleagues who initially dismissed him as just a regular guy. One day, during a team meeting, Alex shared a story about a customer whose car kept breaking down despite multiple repairs. "Sometimes," he said, "it's not about replacing parts, it's about listening to the person behind the wheel." That driver was stressed, running late constantly and driving rough roads every day. Once I figured that out, I adjusted the suspension and gave him tips on maintenance. Problem solved. The room fell silent for a moment before someone clapped, breaking the tension. Soon everyone joined in, laughing and nodding in agreement. From then on, Alex became known as the voice of reason, the one who brought humanity back into conversations dominated by data and theory. His co-workers admired his ability to see beyond the mechanics and focus on the human element. And Richard? He couldn't have been prouder. While Alex thrived in his new job, Speedy Auto Repair continued its downward spiral. Mr. Thompson tried everything to salvage the business, offering discounts, apologizing publicly, even attempting to rehire Alex, but it was too late. The damage had been done. Customers lost trust in the brand, employees quit in droves, and local authorities fined the company for violating labor laws. One by one, the garage's assets were sold off to cover debts, leaving Mr. Thompson with nothing but regret. In private moments, Mr. Thompson replayed the events over and over in his mind. Why hadn't he listened when Richard confronted him? Why had he let pride get in the way of doing the right thing? He thought about Alex, the mechanic he'd fired without a second thought, and wondered where he might be now. Occasionally, he'd catch glimpses of Alex on TV or social media, smiling confidently alongside Richard at press conferences or charity events. Each sighting stung, a painful reminder of the opportunity he'd squandered threefold. Eventually, Mr. Thompson closed up shop for good and disappeared from the public eye. Some said he moved out of town. Others claimed he took odd jobs under fake names, too ashamed to face the community he'd once served. Whatever the truth, one thing was certain. The collapse of Speedy Auto Repair served as a cautionary tale, a stark example of what happens when rigid rules override basic human decency. As for Richard, he didn't stop at helping Alex rebuild his career. Inspired by the mechanic's story, he launched a nationwide initiative aimed at promoting compassion in the workplace. Dubbed the Right Thing Project, the campaign encouraged companies to adopt policies that rewarded empathy and initiative rather than punishing them. Richard traveled across the country, speaking at conferences, meeting with CEOs, and advocating for change. He often invited Alex to join him, Knowing the mechanic's presence added authenticity to the message. Alex didn't think twice about fixing that ambulance, Richard would say during speeches. He didn't care about the risks or the consequences. All he cared about was saving a life. That's the kind of mindset we need more of, not just in our personal lives, but in our businesses too. The project gained traction quickly, sparking debates and inspiring reforms in industries ranging from healthcare to hospitality. Companies began revising their employee handbooks, introducing clauses that allowed workers to act on instinct in emergencies without fear of retaliation. Schools incorporated discussions about moral courage into their curriculums, using Alex's story as a case study. Even lawmakers took notice, proposing legislation to protect employees who stepped outside protocol to help others. Through it all, Alex remained humble. He didn't consider himself a hero or a role model. He was just a mechanic who'd done what anyone else would have done. But seeing the ripple effects of his actions filled him with a quiet sense of pride. For the first time in his life, he realized that one person's choices really could change the world. Despite his success, Alex never forgot where he came from. On weekends, he volunteered at local community centers, teaching kids how to repair bikes and encouraging them to pursue trades. He also stayed in touch with former co-workers from Speedy Auto Repair, offering advice and connections to those struggling to find new jobs. When asked why he bothered helping people who'd once doubted him, Alex simply shrugged. "They were part of my journey," he'd say. "Besides, holding grudges doesn't fix anything. If I've learned anything from all this, it's that forgiveness and kindness go a long way." By the end of the year, Alex's transformation was complete. Gone was the weary mechanic unsure of his future. In his place stood a confident, compassionate man who inspired others through his actions. His story proved that even in the darkest moments, there's always a chance to turn things around, and that sometimes the smallest acts of bravery can lead to the biggest victories. And yet, Alex knew this wasn't the end of his journey. There were still challenges ahead, still ways he could grow and give back. As he looked toward the horizon, he felt ready for whatever came next. After all, he'd already faced the storm and come out stronger on the other side. Months turned into years, and Alex's life continued to evolve in ways he could never have imagined. The mechanic who once worried about making ends meet was now thriving, not just professionally, but personally too. His journey had taken him from the rain-soaked parking lot of a struggling garage to the forefront of a movement that championed kindness, integrity, and humanity. Yet despite all the changes, one thing remained constant: his commitment to doing what was right, no matter the cost. At Richard's company, Alex became more than just an employee. He became a leader. His unique perspective on problem-solving earned him promotions, and soon he was overseeing a team of mechanics tasked with maintaining the company's fleet of experimental vehicles. These weren't ordinary cars. They were prototypes for self-driving. Electric models designed to revolutionize transportation. Working on them pushed Alex out of his comfort zone, forcing him to learn new skills and adapt to cutting-edge technology. But he embraced the challenge, knowing it was another opportunity to grow. What set Alex apart wasn't just his technical expertise. It was his ability to connect with people. He made sure his team felt valued, encouraging them to share ideas and take risks without fear of failure. "Mistakes are how we learn," he'd often say during meetings. "If you're not messing up sometimes, you're not trying hard enough." This approach fostered a culture of innovation and trust, turning his department into one of the most productive in the company. Outside of work, Alex stayed grounded by giving back to the community. He organized free car repair workshops for low-income families, teaching them basic maintenance skills so they could save money and avoid costly breakdowns. On weekends, he visited schools to talk to students about the importance of following their passions, even if those passions didn't align with society's expectations. "Not everyone is meant to sit behind a desk," he'd tell them. "There's dignity in working with your hands and fixing things and solving problems. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise." These talks resonated deeply with young people, many of whom saw themselves in Alex, a regular guy who proved that success isn't about where you start, but how far you're willing to go. Inspired by his words, some kids began exploring careers and trades, while others simply gained confidence in pursuing their dreams, whatever they might be. Richard, too, continued to advocate for change, using his platform to amplify Alex's message. Together, they expanded the Right Thing project into a global initiative, partnering with organizations worldwide to promote compassion in workplaces and communities. They traveled extensively, sharing their story at conferences, universities, and corporate events. Wherever they went, audiences responded with enthusiasm, eager to hear about the mechanic who fixed an ambulance and changed the world. One of their most memorable trips took them to a small village in India, where a group of local mechanics had started a program inspired by Alex's example. Using limited resources, these men repaired broken-down ambulances and donated their time to keep emergency services running smoothly in rural areas. When Alex met them, he was overwhelmed with emotion. Here were people he'd never known, living thousands of miles away, yet they carried forward the same spirit of service that had guided him that rainy night years ago. "You're the real heroes," Alex told them humbly. "I only did what anyone would have done. You're making miracles happen every day." His humility struck a chord with the villagers, who celebrated him as a kindred soul. For Alex, the experience reinforced the idea that kindness has no borders. It transcends language, culture, and geography, connecting us through shared values and humanity. Back home, Alex's relationship with Richard grew stronger over time. What began as gratitude evolved into a genuine friendship built on mutual respect and admiration. Richard admired Alex's authenticity and unwavering moral compass, qualities he felt were rare in today's fast-paced, profit-driven world. And Alex appreciated Richard's willingness to use his wealth and influence to uplift others, rather than hoard power for himself. Their bond deepened during quiet moments, like late-night conversations over coffee or drives through the countryside, when they needed a break from the chaos of public life. During one such drive, Richard turned to Alex and said, "You know, I owe you more than you realize. You didn't just save my life that night. You reminded me why I started this company in the first place. It wasn't to make billions. It was to create something meaningful, something that improves lives. Thanks to you, I haven't lost sight of that." Alex smiled, touched by the sentiment. "We all need reminders sometimes," he replied. "Even billionaires." As the years passed, Alex's story continued to inspire countless individuals. Books were written about him, documentaries, filmed, and awards presented. Yet none of these accolades mattered as much to him as the simple acts of kindness he witnessed daily. The neighbor helping another carry groceries, the stranger offering directions to a lost tourist, the child planting trees to help the environment. To Alex, these moments were proof that his actions had sparked a chain reaction, inspiring others to pay it forward. Eventually, Alex decided to write his own book, not to glorify himself, but to share lessons he'd learned along the way. Titled, "Fixing More Than Engines," it combined practical advice on mechanics with reflections on life, resilience, and the power of doing the right thing. The book became a bestseller, beloved by readers from all walks of life. Critics praised its honesty and relatability, calling it a guide to living with purpose. In the final chapter, Alex wrote, "Life doesn't always give us clear instructions. Sometimes we have to trust our instincts and act, even when it feels risky. Doing the right thing won't always be easy, and it certainly won't always be rewarded, at least not immediately. But if we stay true to ourselves and focus on helping others, the rewards will come in ways we can't predict. And maybe, just maybe, we'll leave the world a little better than we found it." Looking back on his journey, Alex realized how much he'd grown, not because of fame or fortune, but because of the challenges he'd faced and overcome. From losing his job to becoming a symbol of hope, he'd discovered strength he didn't know he had. More importantly, he'd learned that true success isn't measured by titles or bank accounts, but by the impact we have on those around us. On a crisp autumn morning, Alex stood outside his workshop, watching the sunrise paint the sky in shades of orange and pink. Beside him sat a beat-up old truck, its engine humming smoothly after hours of repairs. It belonged to a single mother who relied on it to get her kids to school and herself to work. Fixing it hadn't been glamorous, but it had made a difference, and that was enough. As he wiped his hands on a rag and took a deep breath of cool air, Alex smiled. He didn't know what the future held, but he knew one thing for sure. Wherever life took him next, he'd continue doing what he'd always done. Fixing. Engines, yes, but also hearts, minds, and lives. After all, that's what being human is all about.